29-year-old black woman found hanging from a tree down there in Jackson, Mississippi? Well, her mother spoke out and stated she doesn't believe her daughter did this to herself. Now, there is a person of interest by the name of Terrence Anderson. He has been detained, but not detained in her death.
Nobody has said the word murder in an official document yet. Jackson police haven't said it. The coroner hasn't said it, but a sitting city councilman already has, in writing to the U.S. Attorney's Office. On August 3, 2026, Jackson police located the body of a woman in the 500 block of Road of Remembrance, a neighborhood the department itself described as mostly black, at around 9:05 that night. She was unidentified. Neighbors had found her and called it in. It isn't clear how long she'd been there before that. 3 days later, the Hinds County coroner, Jeremiah Howard, publicly identified her. 29-year-old Tasia Fortune, a mother of 4 who had lived in Mississippi for more than 10 years. Her cause of death has not yet been released. That single missing fact, a manner of death that hasn't been determined, at least not publicly, is the reason this story exists in the first place. Everything else that's happened since has poured into that gap. Her mother, Christy Spivey, told ABC News that Fortune had traveled to Kentucky for a family reunion and that the last time they saw each other, on July 26th, her daughter seemed at peace, not behaving out of the ordinary. Spivey put it plainly, "I know my daughter, and she did not do this to herself." That's her belief, spoken as a mother, not as a medical examiner. It's important to say clearly, that is not, right now, an official finding. But it's also not nothing. Family members are often the first to notice when something is off, and Spivey's certainty is part of why this case escalated so quickly from a local story to a national one. Jackson City Councilman Kenneth Stokes sent a letter to Mississippi's U.S. Attorney Baxter Kruger asking for federal help with the investigation. In that letter, he called Fortune a murder victim. That's a striking thing for an elected official to put in writing before an autopsy result is public. But it's Stokes' characterization, not something police or the coroner have said. Jackson police, for their part, have only said this is an active and ongoing investigation and that they'll share updates as new details develop. That gap, a city official calling it murder, while the department that's actually running the investigation says almost nothing, is where this case actually lives right now. It's worth sitting with that for a second, because it tells you something about trust. When officials go quiet, people don't wait for them. They fill the silence themselves. Investigators have said they interviewed a man who lives near the scene, Terrence Anderson, in connection with the case. According to police, in court, Anderson said he and Fortune had argued before her death, but he denied any involvement in it. Police also raised the possibility that the two had been in a relationship. Anderson denied that too. He has not been charged with anything related to Fortune's death. The charge that actually put him in custody, a felony firearm possession charge, came days later at a Tuesday court appearance where a judge set his bond at $250,000. His brother told NBC News that Anderson is a felon who'd stayed out of trouble for years and worked as a painter, and that he mostly looked after his young son and worked his job. NBC News also reported that Fortune had a history of substance use and was reportedly living at the vacant home where she was found. Those are secondhand characterizations from that reporting, not established facts about what happened to her, and not confirmed causes of anything. It's easy, in a case like this, to let a detail like living at the vacant home quietly turn into an explanation. It isn't one. It's a fact about where she was, not about how she died. The vacant house itself has its own story, and it's one most coverage of this case hasn't spent much time on. It's owned by an entity called Jackson Poverty Trust 4, which land records show owns 21 properties across Hinds County and has owned this specific one since at least 2024. Before that, it belonged to a man named Larry Wilson. A city hearing was set for August 11th to decide whether the property is enough of a public health and safety risk to be cleaned up, boarded, or torn down within the year. That process is a separate, civil one. It has nothing to do with the death investigation directly. But it says something about the conditions surrounding where she was found. An abandoned property in a rental registry that hadn't been updated with the city since 2023, sitting on a list of 24 similar properties owned by the same trust. That's not a suspect, it's context. but it's the kind of context that shapes how a neighborhood and a family experiences a case like this. Now here's why this story spread as fast as it did. This isn't the first time Mississippi has investigated a hanging death in the past year. Trey Reed, a 21-year-old Black Delta State University student, was found hanging from a tree near the campus pickleball courts by a faculty member early one September morning in 2025. University police said there was no evidence of foul play. Both the Bolivar County coroner's initial examination and the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's autopsy concluded the same thing. The cause of death was hanging, the manner was suicide. The Cleveland Police Department said the findings were consistent with the initial investigation. But Reed's family didn't accept that as the final word. They retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who said the family would not accept vague conclusions when so many questions remain, and commissioned a second independent autopsy, paid for by Colin Kaepernick's Autopsy Initiative, to check the state's findings. The NAC put out a statement saying it approached the initial findings with what it called skepticism, citing the country's history of racially motivated violence. Online, the case exploded well beyond what the evidence actually supported. TikTok and Instagram posts alleging Reed had been beaten before his death racked up more than 130,000 likes each, despite there being no confirmed evidence for that claim. The independent pathologist, Dr. Matthias Okoye, told the family on a call that he'd found an injury on Reed's neck he couldn't yet explain without examining the belt Reed was found with. But he was also careful to say he could not make a final determination yet. Reed's own grandmother, who was raising him, eventually had to publicly ask people to stop spreading unverified claims. "I don't usually respond to social media, but I'm tired," she wrote. As of the most recent public reporting, the independent findings were still not fully released, and the official ruling of suicide has not changed. Corey Zucatis, an unhoused white man in his 30s, died in a similar way in Vicksburg. The state medical examiner ruled that one a suicide as well, with far less public attention. None of that tells us anything about what happened to Tasia Fortune. These are three separate cases with separate investigators, separate evidence, and separate findings. And in Reed's case specifically, official investigators and an independent pathologist paid for by the family have still landed, so far, in largely the same place. It would be irresponsible to suggest these cases are the same story, and this video isn't going to. But it explains the speed and the size of the public reaction to Fortune's death. Because when a community has just watched a case like Reed's unfold, where the family's own hired expert couldn't immediately contradict a suicide finding, but suspicion online outran the evidence anyway, that same community is primed to distrust official silence the next time it happens. That's not a flaw in the public's reasoning. It's a pattern built from real, recent experience. Even in a case like Fortune's, where investigators haven't offered a finding at all yet, official or otherwise. And that reaction hasn't happened in a vacuum. Fortune's case is unfolding at the exact same time as another one that has nothing to do with her, but everything to do with the mood in Mississippi right now. The case of 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells. Wells went missing on July 4th after a boat trip with friends to Horn Island, a remote barrier island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. His body was found in the water 2 days later. The sheriff initially said there was no evidence of foul play and that drowning was suspected, but more than a month later, the manner of his death still hasn't been officially determined. The Wells family hired civil rights attorney Ben Crump and commissioned an independent autopsy, which came back undetermined pending investigation. The original autopsy from the state medical examiner's office is complete, but its findings, along with the rest of the evidence, are sealed until a grand jury can review them. Crump has said investigators kept telling the family they saw no evidence of foul play, even though, according to Crump, some of the teens on the trip recorded an altercation on the boat, Wells and another person yelling at each other. Crump also said Wells's friends left the island with his phone, and that by the time the family got it back, messages had been deleted. Two of the friends who were with Wells that day later returned to Horn Island with their own attorneys to look at the layout and dynamic of where it happened, an unofficial step that only deepened public suspicion that something wasn't adding up. Photos of Wells, a young black man surrounded by a mostly white group of friends, spread widely online, and for a lot of people, they read as a warning sign rooted in Mississippi's history, whether or not that history has anything to do with what actually happened on that boat. That's the atmosphere Tasia Fortune's case landed in. Two unresolved deaths, weeks apart, both involving black Mississippians, both drawing accusations that investigators are moving too slowly or saying too little. Whether or not the cases are connected in any factual sense, and there is no evidence that they are connected in how the public is reading them. That's not a coincidence investigators created. It's one they now have to investigate inside of. So here's where things actually stand, stripped of speculation. In Tasia Fortune's case, no official cause of death has been released. No one has been charged in connection with her death. The federal assistance request from Councilman Stokes is still sitting with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with no public response yet. The property hearing is a separate civil matter and doesn't affect the death investigation itself. And in the middle of all of it is a mother who has already said, publicly, that she doesn't believe the version of events she's afraid officials might eventually land on. What's actually being contested here isn't just a cause of death. It's who gets to say what happened, and how long the public is willing to wait for an answer before deciding for themselves. Jackson police have asked for patience. Fortune's family and a growing number of people watching this case aren't sure that patience has been earned. There are a few specific things that would actually move this case forward, and they're worth naming plainly, because they're the difference between speculation and reporting. First, an official cause and manner of death from the coroner's office, which still hasn't been made public. Second, a response, in either direction, from the U.S. Attorney's Office to Councilman Stokes' request for federal involvement, which would signal whether this stays a local matter or becomes something larger. Third, any decision by prosecutors on whether Terrence Anderson's police interview leads anywhere at all, or whether he's cleared and the investigation moves elsewhere entirely. Right now, none of those three things has happened. Everything driving this story, the mother's certainty, the councilman's letter, the online attention, is filling space that official answers haven't filled yet. That doesn't make any of it wrong. It just means none of it is confirmation. That's also the honest answer to the question a lot of people watching this case actually want answered, which is simply, do we know what happened to her yet? No, nobody outside the investigation does. What we know is what's been said, by whom, and what hasn't been said at all. And right now, the second category is doing most of the work. This is one of those cases where the full picture isn't in yet, so if you want to know when it is, please subscribe to this channel. Everything in this video is based on public statements from police, court proceedings, and named sources. Nothing here should be read as confirming guilt, a cause of death, or any finding investigators haven't made themselves. This is an ongoing case, and the facts may change.